My parents knew as soon as I was born that there was something different about my life, but it didn't get diagnosed until I was about 2.5. My spiritual journey started at 5 when I said, God, why did you make me the way you did? I said, come down here, admit you made a mistake, and fix it. And the Holy Spirit said, I didn't make a mistake. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. And I made you for my glory and my honor. And I'm going to use you. I'm going to use you just the way you are. I was told by the church that God was going to heal me, because I started going to an Assemblies of God church. I said, I've got faith. I can believe God for that. So I told my parents, I said, I'm going to throw my braces away. My parents said, within 3.5 years, you'll be all doubled over and won't be able to do anything for yourself anymore. 3.5 years came and they were exactly right. I had to go back to the Vermont Achievement Center and do some convalescing and be in a body cast. And it was at that time that a nurse talked to me and said, Mike, the way you work with the kids around here, she said, you should become a chaplain. And as soon as she said that, the Holy Spirit just quickened my spirit. And I said, yes, yes, that's what I'm called to do. And I know it. And so I went home after I got done with everything, and I told my parents, and I said, oh, you don't want to do that? You're going to be so disappointed. I said, Mom and Dad, you don't understand. There's a calling on my life. And I've got to pursue it. I've got to pursue it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And my parents said, no, you're not. And I said, okay, God, you told me 2 things. 1, I've got to honor my parents. 2, I've got to honor you. My parents have done everything for me, but I know you placed this call in my life. And I said, do something to change it, because you can. You can open that door. You can do things that I can't do. And a few weeks later, I had a conversation with my dad. I went through the program like everybody else, and they didn't have the ramps and the widened doors and things like that. So I had guys and gals pulling me up and down stairs in my, manual wheelchair, getting in and out of classes. I couldn't take notes myself, so I picked the prettiest girl in class and got her to take notes for me, or found somebody that took real good notes and they took notes for me. After Valley Forge, I prayed and I said, okay, God, where do I go now? And God said, I want you to go to Community Bible Church. And I was their kind of administrative assistant and worked with, hospital ministries, and we started a shelter together, and through that shelter I met my wife. She was one of the volunteers, and got married, and that was just a wonderful 5 years of getting some ministry experience underneath my belt. And God said, I've called you to be a chaplain, and you need to go and get your training for that. And the place to do that was at AGTS. Through an act of faith and miracles, God put Linda and I here 2 weeks before school was supposed to start. It was very hard. It was one trial after another, but it was also the glory of God bringing us both through. If I know God's called me to do something, there isn't anything that divine determination isn't going to do to get me through it. My wife was in intensive care. I talked to Linda and I said, I want to take the test. How do you feel about it? She said, go ahead, take the test. because I know God called you, and He called us together. So I said, okay, we'll do it. We had gotten through half of the test, and Chaplain Worthley received a call that Linda was dying and that she probably wouldn't make it through the next couple of hours. And I turned to Chaplain Worthley and I said, I don't know if it's allowed or not, but I would like to continue to take my test in the intensive care unit. And he said, yeah, I'll do it. He asked me questions and I answered them, and Chaplain Worthley pronounced to Linda that I passed my test and that she would be remembered. At the next council meeting where the ordination was going to take place, not 2 seconds after he pronounced that it was done, she was gone. When I finished seminary, I took clinical pastoral education. They opened up an opportunity for me to work, made a place for me as a volunteer, and I worked with the staff there for about 12 years. I worked every aspect of the hospital. The other day, this lady came up behind me and she said, didn't you used to work at St. John's as a chaplain? I said, yes. She said, your ministry was very effective there. I remember the influence that you had on that hospital. My life and my disability is not my problem. My life and my disability is my gift.